Hello everyone and welcome back to the video. Today I'm going to be talking about something that I've noticed over the past few years, and I'm wondering if anyone else noticed the same thing. It just feels like laming is suddenly just not a problem anymore in pro games for Age of Empires. Now, a couple years back, laming was a massive problem, or at least it was made out to be. Like, we're talking 3-4 years ago, maybe 2 years ago at the earliest, everyone in pro tournaments was complaining about how laming was overpowered. Everyone was going for laming, like for early game stealing, and laming just means stealing your opponent's boars and sheep or killing their deer in the early game, just cheesy tactics to get yourself ahead. And everyone was doing that in some form a few years back. And of course, the pro players were complaining about it. They were asking for a few things like, maybe make the boars always spawn at the back, make the sheep spawn closer, and a bunch of other things, like even to the extent that they were asking to ban laming or ban stealing in tournaments. And I don't think this ever happened. Like, laming was never outright banned, but some tournaments did bend to the pressure of pro players and did actually script the maps to make the boars closer to the town center and closer towards the back of the base. Now, laming was extremely popular, and I think there's a few reasons to why it was popular back then and why it's not that much of a problem anymore. In fact, right now, it's basically a non-issue in a lot of pro games. I will also mention that I'm not sure how big of a problem it was back then or now in mid or low elo, so let me know in the comments what your experience is with people laming or stealing your resources in Dark Age on the ladder. Is it a big problem at low mid elo, or is it just never been a problem? Was it a problem before and not anymore? Do let me know how that goes, because I don't really watch enough to really understand the dynamic at those levels and those elo brackets. All I can say though for sure is that in pro games, laming was an issue before, and now it's not that big of a topic. And I think there's a few reasons for that I've noticed and I think have played a role in why that is. The number one being that everyone realized how overpowered deers are. I think people just were sleeping on deers before. They would lure like 1 or 2 deers and then just go scout the opponent, or even just skip luring deers altogether to go for the lame and wanting to scout as well. But nowadays, people realize like getting deer early is such a huge boost to your economy, because you're getting the fastest source of food in the game besides shorefish, which is basically hunt like deer and boar, and you're getting that for free. All you have to do is invest 1 to 3 minutes of scouting time. And so now going to lame instead of luring deers is considered a huge risk. If you go lame, you're not getting your own deers, and the time it takes you to go from your base all the way to the opponent's side of the map is a long time. So you bet your ass if you don't find a single boar or sheep, you're not making it back with a positive gain, and you're actually going to be behind because your opponent just pulled in all of his deers. And so with the game kind of being sped up and people realizing how strong deers are, laming became a lot riskier, and generally speaking, people just don't want to take those risks when it comes to tournament games. It's also worth noting that players tend to take their boars earlier. As I mentioned, the game kind of sped up in the last few years, and so players taking their boars earlier makes the laming window or the stealing enemy boar window a lot smaller, because now you probably have until minute 4, maybe minute 5 to steal a boar, whereas back then you probably have up until minute 6 to where you can steal a boar. Whatever the number is, you have a couple extra minutes to steal a boar, whereas now the boars are coming in a lot quicker and people are trying to go for like 18 pop up times instead of like 20 or 21 up times. And so the combination of it being riskier and a shorter window just makes laming not as appealing as it once was. I also think another factor is that people are becoming more risk adverse because the skill difference is actually much closer nowadays. Before, there was a major skill difference between a lot of the different players. For example, a few years ago, if you're up against Viper, if you're not laming him like 2 boars and 4 sheep, you don't have a chance, you're gonna lose. And that was the mentality with a lot of players. There was a top 8, and if you're going up against the top 8, you were a major underdog, and you would probably have to lame, or else you just don't really have a chance to win. Nowadays though, the skill level is a lot closer, and the reason is people just play more. The game's been out more, there's more prize money in tournaments, and so the competition has really ramped up in the past few years. And nowadays, people just don't see themselves as big underdogs anymore. They don't want to go for risky plays from the start of the game. Everyone kind of values their chances a bit more by just playing normally, and so yes, there is the underdog factor still in there. It's not as prominent as it was once before. And so all these factors together made laming lose a lot of popularity over these last couple years. Now I also want to talk about something that's quite important regarding laming as just an example. A lot of times, I, myself included, complain about things in the game, even though they're not actually a problem. It's just that we haven't found the solution. Like, laming didn't stop because we made boars spawn at the back. Boars still spawn at the front on Arabia, and still laming is not as popular as before. So the point is, yes, sometimes there's some stuff that's overpowered and like you actually have no counterplay. And I think a good example of that was monks a while back. I went on a huge rant about monks being broken, and honestly, I think I was right. I think monks were at the point where there was no counterplay. But a lot of things that actually have counterplay, a lot of pro players, again, myself included, just complain about it before trying to find solutions. And this is something that I think everybody is guilty of. We go for the complain route, truth and, oh, this is so annoying to play against, instead of, oh, let's just find a counter to it. I think a really good example of this right now is the all-in phosphor rushes and the U-pudding rushes that are floating around. There's actually some insane counter strategies to those rushes, and I think people are not exploring them enough and instead opting to go for the complain routes. And listen, I get it. I actually made a whole video about, a Reddit post complaining about the strategies, and I understand a lot of the points that come out of it. I totally understand having your experience ruined because you just want to play a standard game, and the guy rushing basically forces you to play an all-in different style game than what you expected or what you intended to play. That being said though, I think there are a lot of good counters to the phosphor rush and to the U-pudding, to these all-in castle age rushes that people aren't exploring. Like for example, sending a Vil from Dark Age to lane, sending a forward villager and making your forward production, whether it's archers or scouts, just making that forward and combining it with one tower is a really good counter strategy. In fact, the other day Vivi destroyed me when I was trying to go for a fast castle by doing just that. Georgians forward range right away, 17 pop up, and I just died to archers. And I think laming was a perfect example of this. I believe laming was absolutely never broken. There was a clear relationship between it being a risk versus reward. If you get the boar, if you get the sheep, then you got a nice advantage, then you got a reward. However, if you got nothing, then you wasted your time, you didn't get your deers, and you didn't get anything out of sending your scout forward. In a lot of cases, it also opened you up to getting counter lamed. Your opponent can then see you coming forward, and then once he has all of his sheep and boar, he can easily send his scout forward and try to find maybe 2 of your sheep. At that point, the boar would probably be gone, but he might take 2 of your sheep and he'd actually come out ahead of the exchange. Again, I could just be the only one that's noticed this pattern, and maybe it's just an issue that I've blown up in my head, but I swear a few years back, everybody was non-stop talking about how overpowered laming was, and it almost got banned out of a couple tournaments. In fact, it was being heavily pressured at some point to be banned, or at least be limited in some way, shape, or form. Like you couldn't steal boars, but you could steal sheep. There was a lot of ideas around, nerfing laming artificially instead of just finding ways around it. Overall though, and I'll end this video by saying that I honestly really love Age of Empires for this exact fact. Sometimes people come up with tactics, techniques, whether they're cheesy or, just valid straight up techniques. Well, like all techniques are valid, but like stealing your opponent's resources is maybe considered a little bit more cheesy. But sometimes players come up with these tactics that at first seem unfair, but because it's a strategy game and it's fairly well balanced overall, there's almost always a counter, almost always a way around what your opponent is doing. Sometimes you just have to get creative. And listen, sometimes there is a luck factor. Like sometimes, okay, if your opponent runs forward, finds 4 sheep and a boar right off the bat, okay, sometimes you could be just dead off the start. But even in those rare cases, there's always something you can do to pull yourself back in the game. And if there's one game out of 100 that's out of your control and you're losing due to pure luck, then so be it. That's just the way that an RTS game is played out. Sometimes there is that luck factor that will take away from the strategy aspect and be a bit more variance than you'd expect. But I think overall, having these different techniques and different strategies add a lot of health to the game. And I think just finding ways around what people are doing is the way forward, rather than complaining, unless something is truly overpowered, like Manaspa at the moment being very hard to counter, and they basically just don't have a very generic counter. So as always, right now, Manaspa are broken, so the devs are trying to nerf Sicilians again. Anyways, thanks for watching the video. This is a bit more of a random one, kind of like a discussion video. Let me know what you guys think about it. I actually have an idea to make a discussion video about deer luring, because a lot of people are saying how deer luring is super boring, super tedious, and they kind of want that out of the game. People are actually suggesting that scouts shouldn't have the capacity to lure deers, and deers would just simply like get lured a bit and then walk back instantly after the first like 1 or 2 movements. People are requesting that to be added into the game, or at least there's talks and discussions around that. But I wanted to wait for that video and do it actually on a live stream, because I don't have the answers to like the whole like deer luring situation. I see views on both sides, so I'm waiting to do a video on stream for that topic. So if you want a little sneak peek, that's what's coming for the next discussion video. But I figured I'd start by making a discussion video regarding laming and regarding the whole idea of something appearing to be overpowered, but if you just find some out-of-the-box solutions or tweak a little bit of your gameplay, you can find a natural counter to it, and you don't have to ask for a nerf right away. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe if you guys did enjoy, and comments down below your thoughts on the whole topic and discussion. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.